Hello everybody, it's Andrew from Adaptive. And thanks for joining me today in this latest video, which is going to be all about rejection sensitive dysphoria and people pleasing, and some tips on maybe how to deal with it. So, as usual, this video is going to be totally unscripted in pure ADHD format, and hopefully it's something which people can relate to. I'm also going to try out a little bit of a new format here. I'm experimenting with OBS Studio, and as you can see I've split this screen into two, and the idea is I'm going to put some useful information on there that might be sometimes funny, sometimes useful, and always for your visual pleasure to go along with me droning on. So let me know what you think in the comments about this, and I always love feedback, good or bad, so I aim to please, so do let me know. Anyway, let's get started. So what is rejection sensitive dysphoria? Well, first of all, I'm going to call it RSD from now on, because rejection sensitive dysphoria is quite a mouthful to say repeatedly, and I can't get my tongue around it. So RSD is what we're naming it. So RSD in essence is a severe reaction to rejection or perceived rejection. So when I say an extreme emotional response, what do I mean? Well, it goes beyond the usual reaction to being rejected, as to being a little bit upset and wondering what you did wrong and trying to make it better next time. And it goes way beyond, even being upset for 2 or 3 minutes about something. I'm talking about the kind of response which is all-consuming. It consumes all your thoughts, and it really has an impact on your day-to-day life because you are thinking about it. And it can stop you sleeping at night. It can stop you wanting to eat. It can even make it so that you feel like you want to go away and crawl into a hole and curl up and go to sleep forever. And it can also last quite a long time. Now, normally when people talk about RSD, I hear them say it lasts for, 2 or 3 days at the most. Well, I actually have, from my personal experience, have had RSD that's gone on for weeks. And I find that it will continue until one of 3 things happens. These 3 things will probably appear on the wall there, so let's see what happens. Firstly, it will continue until enough time has passed that you don't really remember the details anymore, and you kind of forget how it makes you feel. Secondly, it can go on until you feel you've resolved the situation. So if your brain thinks you have fixed things, you tend to start feeling better. And the third thing that will stop it is something else happening that you've got to worry about instead. And then you go on to worry about the new rejection. So, what can trigger rejection sensitive dysphoria? Well, pretty much anything really. Our brains are quite creative. ADHD brains in particular are very creative. They look for signs, they look for signals, they put things together and come up with answers. So any situation where your brain recognizes or perceives that you've been rejected or somebody doesn't like you can be interpreted as rejection, and rejection sensitive dysphoria can kick in. So what sort of things can trigger it? Well, it could be a really big, really serious incident, like you're at work, you're locking up for the night, your phone rings, email comes in, and you forget to turn off the sausage making machine in the factory on the shop floor. You go in the morning, And the boss wants to see you because you've got a factory full of sausages and a big bill for sausage meat. Not good, not ideal. So it could be an actual real event like that, which is serious. On the other extreme, it can be something trivial that other people might not think of. So you might be feeling a bit down because you left the sausage machine on last night, maybe. And you ring up you ring up. That's very old-fashioned of me, isn't it? You send a messenger to your friend. You send a WhatsApp to your friend and say, I'm feeling a bit down, I've had a bit of a problem at work. Can we have a chat tomorrow over coffee? And you don't hear anything. And after 10 minutes, you think, what's going on here? Have I upset them? So you send another message. And then you hear nothing. And they don't respond. And that in itself can also trigger rejection sensitive dysphoria. Another example, a real example from me, this is the sort of thing that happened quite commonly when I was at work, where I sent an email to somebody in the organisation, and I won't go into the details, but let's just say I wrote it quite quickly and without putting a lot of thought into it. And some of the words and language, I didn't swear or anything like that I used were maybe a bit abrupt, more abrupt than they should be. And I was in a role where I was supposed to be customer facing and really good with customers. And I'd copied my boss in on that email. And the next thing I knew is I had my boss on the phone asking me what the hell I was doing. What have I said that for? That's not appropriate of somebody of my position. All these things that bosses tend to say to you when they're a bit upset about something. And this really had a big impact on me. I went back to the email and I read it again and I thought, yeah, should have thought about that. Shouldn't have just sent it. And I immediately went on and wrote to said person and copied in her boss, who had been copied in on the email trail, a big grovelling apology and explanation about what I'd said, why I'd said it, and how I shouldn't have said it. And I think I got a message back saying, oh, that's fine. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. Now, nothing bad happened to me, but I spent the next 4 or 5 days traumatized by this event, being unable to sleep and not eating, because I was worried that I'd upset not just the person I'd emailed, but my boss and this other lady's boss. Worried that they hated me and that they thought I was useless. Worried that I was going to lose my job. And all sorts of other doomsday scenarios. And that's pretty much a good summary of RSD. And it impacts people with ADHD quite a lot. And it's something that's not very often talked about. And it certainly isn't in the diagnostic criteria of the DSM. So it's one that crops up quite a lot when I am coaching. And it's probably one of the number one topics that I deal with. So unfortunately, as with many neurodivergent traits, there isn't a magic solution to this. And in some cases, RSD is probably a good thing, which is where it probably comes from in the brain, because you have that overactive imagination that is looking for patterns and connections. However, in today's society, being traumatized because somebody forgot to respond to a text message isn't really going to wash it with the boss or with your wife or husband or your kids when you feel like you want to crawl in a hole and die. So what I thought I'd do here is just share a little system that I've come up with, which helps some of my clients at least deal with rejection sensitive dysphoria. So hold on to your horses, here it comes. So, how do you deal with this? How can you wave a magic wand and make it go away? Well, unfortunately you can't. We're not all Harry Potter or Hermione Granger, and you actually can't just make it go away. But the first step of doing something about it is to actually understand and know and recognise when it's happening. And then you can do something about it. There's a saying, name it, tame it, which is used quite a lot, but it's very, very true when it comes to ADHD and many of the symptoms. If you recognise it and understand it, it's then easier to do something about it. So I've devised a system which I often work through with clients to help with this. The ultimate goal is to make this an habitual thing so that you do it automatically without thinking about it. But basically, I've come up with a system and added on an acronym, because we all need another acronym, but it's just to help you remember it. So the acronym is CALMS, C-A-L-M-S. That's CALMS. So let me take you through how this works. So the first step in this process is check. And when I say check, you need to check in with your mind, with your brain. And you need to ask yourself one simple question. You need to ask yourself, is this RSD? Is this rejection sensitive dysphoria? Now, many people have internal narrators that have ADHD. So this is all the voices that go on inside your head, telling you what to do, what not to do, what might happen, what might not happen, who said what, when, what's going to happen tomorrow, oh my goodness, what happens if it rains tomorrow, do I need to take an umbrella, etc, etc. It's just that constant voice which is telling you things, or saying things, or asking things. And in most cases that's very annoying, but it can be useful. And if you have one, ask it. Is this rejection sensitive dysphoria? If you're asking yourself this question, I think you can probably be pretty sure that the answer is going to be yes. So, first, check in with yourself. Ask yourself if it's rejection sensitive dysphoria. And once you get the answer back, or you've had a bit of a discussion about it in your head, or written it down, whatever it might be, you get the answer back, yes. What do you do next? Well, that's where assess comes in. You need to assess the situation. So this is calling on the logical part of your brain, which is always in there. Asking it, well, what's the worst thing that can happen here? What is the worst possible scenario? And when I say worst possible scenario, I am talking doomsday. Let your brain go wild. Could it be you're going to get the sack for leaving the sausage machine on? Could it be your best friend now hates you and they're going to go on Facebook and share lots of misinformation and rumours and turn everybody against you so nobody likes you? Really, really the worst possible thing you can imagine that might happen or that has happened. And once you've done that, do it again, but think about things that are more likely to have happened. So, you know, your friend's a little bit annoyed with you, but they'll get over it. And you keep doing this until you get to a point where you end up with something like, hey, they've got ADHD, they probably just missed it and forgotten to respond. So you need to map out all of the scenarios from doomsday, end of the world stuff, to nah, whatever. So once you've let that brain go crazy with all that imaginative doomsday stuff, it's time to move on to the next part, which is listen. The listen part. This is where you're going to use your internal narrator again, but it's going to be using the more analytical, logical part of your brain. And the simple question you are going to ask yourself this time is, how likely each of these scenarios is going to happen. And when I say how likely, you just need a simple rating. Low, medium, high. 1, 2, 3. 1 is, nah, that's never ever going to happen in a million years. And 3 might be, yeah, this is very likely to happen and I can virtually guarantee it. So for each situation, ask yourself that simple question. And your logical part of your brain will answer with a 1, 2, 3 or low, medium, high. And chances are you will come up with the fact that my friend hates me, they're going to turn the whole world against me, they're going to make me lose my job, they're going to make me lose my house. You'll probably come up with well, that's a low, that's not going to happen in a million years. And hey, my friend's got ADHD, they've probably forgotten, is probably going to come up as a high, a 3. So you go through that for each of the things that you've imagined. And that is in essence what that part is. Listen to your thoughts about each scenario. Okay, so now we've got a whole load of possible scenarios. We know how likely each one is to happen. What we're going to do next is to manage the situation. So that's the M in calms, manage the situation. So the task with manage is, for each of these scenarios, is to work out what you would do should that happen. And the point of this really is to get to that doomsday scenario and understand that even if you did lose your job, you did lose all your friends, that you recognise that that's not the end of the world. You can survive, you'll move on, and something else will happen. You'll do something new. So you might make new friends. You might decide you don't need any friends and you are going to live in that hole in the ground and you are happy. Point is, for every single one of those scenarios, there are things that you would do. In the more trivial examples, you probably will send your friend a message and say, hey, what's up? You're okay? You didn't respond. Chances are they'll come back to you and say, oh yeah, I forgot, sorry about that, I feel so bad. And then they have rejection sensitive dysphoria. And it goes round and round and round, as you can probably imagine. But the point is, no matter what your brain has come up with, unless it's the universe blew up, which probably is the end and you probably should give up and go away, unless it's that type of scenario, there are things you can do, there are things you will need to do, there are things you will want to do to put the situation right. So understand how you can manage all of those scenarios. And that's almost it. I haven't come to the S yet, I'll come on to that in a second. But in essence, what you're doing here is taking a step back and putting on your logical hat and forcing your brain to analyse the situation, almost as if it's doing a risk assessment. Because you've probably all heard of risk assessments, really exciting things that people have to do in workplaces. But it's actually a risk assessment. What's the impact of this? What's the likelihood? How can I mitigate it? That's what you're doing. And by forcing your brain to do this in a controlled way, I think it works because it basically makes your brain think that it's done something to resolve the situation. So no matter what happens, you're armed with, this is how likely it is to happen, and if it does, this is the plan. Your brain has processed it. it can take a step back, it can chill out for a bit. And by going through that process, logically analysing the reality of the situation can have quite a calming effect on the brain, in my experience. And chances are you'll find that you feel a whole lot better. Now you're armed with the knowledge. I know what could happen, and I know what I can do if this happens. If that's the case, there is no need to be anxious. There is no need to be worried about what you are going to do. So finally, the S. What about the S? Well, it's going to be a bit of a pain if every time you feel like this, you've got to do all this stuff. And it really, the whole point of this is to do it so often and so frequently that you commit it to your subconscious mind, and your brain does it automatically and you don't have to think about it. So the S is simply for subconscious. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it until you just do it and you don't think about it. And hopefully that would mean when you're facing these situations, you go through this analysis and you come out at the end of it and realise, yeah, this isn't good, but this is what I can do about it. Your brain's happy, you go to bed, you go to sleep, blah, 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 blah. It's all about tricking your brain, really. So that's all there is to it. Ask yourself, is this RSD? What's the worst that could happen? What would I do if the worst happened? And that, in effect, is it. Some people can do all this in their brain. Some people might like to write it out in a journal or on a piece of paper. Everybody's different. And neither do I profess this is going to be right for everybody. It's just one of the tools that I use with my coaching clients to help them deal with the rejection sensitive dysphoria. There are other techniques as well that we can use. And we may come up with something new on the fly. That's the beauty about coaching, is there are no right and wrong answers, and it's you, the coachee, that actually comes up with the solutions. So coaching is quite a magical thing. So I hope this has kind of given you a bit of a taste of the sorts of things that we might cover in coaching sessions. And if anybody wants to have a chat about coaching, drop me an email, pop on my website, make an appointment for a chat. No commitment, absolutely free. Anyway, I plan to do a load more of these on other common topics to do with ADHD. I have no problem sharing the tools that I use, because one of my aims here is to help people. I want to help as many people as I possibly can, based on my experiences and my challenges. That's really what I'm here for. That's what it's all about. So, thanks for watching. If you've stayed with me this long, fantastic. I hope to build up a little bit of a following on YouTube, so I can get more information out there. I'd love it for you to interact with me on there and get a bit of a conversation going, because I hate talking at a screen. I hate doing PowerPoints. My real energy comes from actually talking to people and interacting with people. Everybody I ever speak to it's a learning. Every day is a school day. Anyway, if you found this interesting, useful, funny, please subscribe, because I want to get to 50 so I can do a live stream, and then I can say I'm a proper YouTuber because I've done a live stream, and it would be cool. And then you can join me when you're at work, and I can come and say wacky things to you about ADHD and hopefully make your day better. Make sure as well that you click the notification bell so that you see when I release a new video. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I have no idea how long this is going to be. I've got to go and do some editing now. I've got to put some stuff on the screen over there. Happy days. One day I might get some decent equipment, but let's just start with what I have. Anyway, follow me, subscribe, and come back for more exciting insights into dealing with ADHD. Thanks everyone.